Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It is Monday, November 18th. This is episode 151. That's Don Harris. That's Chuck McKitinick. Matt Roy here.
What's up?
What's going on? You guys have a good weekend?
Yes,
Don,
sir.
Don,
Yours
was exciting.
Oh, man.
Tell us about your weekend. You went to North Carolina, so you saw Duke, Cameron Indoor.
My, hold on a second. I spilled my Diet Coke.
Oh, God.
No, it didn't spill.
Okay, that's good.
My son and I are both huge Duke Blue Devil fans. My days go back to 1978 with Gene Banks and Mike Jaminski, all the way through the Johnny Dawkins and Mark Allery and Leitner and Hurley and all that. And then growing up, my son knew that I was, and so he started watching Duke, and then he fell in love with different teams like the 2010 team with Kyle Singler and all those guys and modern day. So anyway, we took a bucket list trip to go see Duke and his high school teammate, Justin Robinson, who's a coach on the Blue Devils. And we got
how was it?
Oh, man. Goosebumps. I even shed a tear, man. It was like, I felt like I was going to tell Chuck, it's like Rudy's dad going into Notre Dame Stadium, a more glorious sight these eyes have never seen. When you walk into Cameron Indoor Stadium, the history, it's a small cracker box of a gym, goes back to the early 40s. It's nothing like a regular arena. We sat 4 rows behind the Duke bench. The Crazies, they were up 50-12 on Wofford College, and the Crazies were acting like it was North Carolina with the game on the line. It was unbelievable. And since we were there, my son says, Carolina's playing Friday night. So we drove over to Chapel Hill when we first got there, and we went to the famous Four Corners bar, Four Corners offense from Dean Smith, right there on campus, and did a little pre-gaming, and then we went over to the Dean Dome, which is a completely different experience. It's almost like an NBA experience, very much so. In fact, it seats 21,000 people.
I didn't know that.
Which is 3,000 more than the Spurs. So, and they were packed for a game against American University. So it was
awesome.
Hoops heaven.
Awesome. Chuck, how's your weekend?
Free of incident. Just the way I like it.
It's the company line.
Yes.
Mine was good. Broncos went.
Matt, how was your weekend?
Mine was good. Nobody asked. I was just going to tell you
guys.
Your
quarterback is amazing.
Yeah. Bo Nix had the
your defense is amazing.
You can stop the timer now, Bob. Bob was timing how long it took for me to get to Bo Nix. Bo Nix had arguably the best day any rookie quarterback has ever had. So best statistical day.
Wow.
No quarterback in NFL history has ever had a game of over 80% completion percentage, over 300 yards, at least 4 touchdowns, and no picks. So he's coming along. But moreover, shout out to Kenny Dillingham and Arizona State. They were picked to finish last in the Big 12 this year in the media poll. They now control their own destiny to get to the Big 12 title game. So shout out to Kenny Dillingham and Arizona State.
Shout out for you to not remembering that ASU was in the Big 12.
Yes. And shout out for you for not mentioning that they should have lost to Texas State.
They didn't, though. All that matters is W's, Chuck.
That's correct.
All that matters is W's.
The Broncos are keeping score.
Chiefs should have lost to the Broncos, and we're not going to talk about that either. So, we got a lot going on today, though. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone subscribe and subscribe to the YouTube channel, both News 4 and Fox SA. If you're so inclined, download, rate, review the podcast. The last couple have been doing really well, so thank everybody for that. Cowboys playing tonight on Monday Night Football, playing the Texans in a game that we thought was going to mean a lot at the beginning of the year, now might ultimately mean nothing for the Cowboys, but we'll get into it. Both on the Cowboys and the Texans side, plus the Spurs, they've now dropped 2 straight. Saturdays really doesn't count. They didn't have Wemby, didn't have Sohan, didn't have Devin Vassell. So that one was really kind of.
It counts.
I mean, it counts in the standings, but as far as like speaking of the team, I don't think you can draw a lot from a game like that where you don't have a lot of your key scorers and pieces. Plus, we're going to get some insight on the potential new arena for the Spurs this week. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But I have trivia for you guys today. When was the last time the Cowboys went winless at home? Right now, they're 0-4 at home this season. They don't have an easy home schedule.
1960?
When is the last time the Cowboys went winless at home?
Where did they win that one game, Troy's?
It was in New Orleans, wasn't it?
I'm going to say Troy Aikman's rookie year, 1980. Huh?
Was it Washington?
Yeah, you're right. I think it was in Washington. Yeah.
I think
Troy
Hobby's
Aikman's rookie
right.
year.
Yeah.
Is that the guess?
Yeah, I'll go with that
Yeah,
too.
89, is it?
That is correct.
All right.
89. They went 1 and I figured that would be kind of. I didn't know if it happened before or more recently than that. They haven't really had a 1-15 season since then. So,
No.
yep, the one game they won was in Washington. So they
Nice
went
memory.
defeated.
Javier, nice job.
There you go,
Wearing
Hobby.
glasses for a reason.
It's a bad hat he's wearing, but besides that, the USC hat over there. Anyway, so
I thought
yeah,
it was the St. Louis Cardinals.
they might
Speaking of
go
eyes.
defeated this
Yeah.
year at home. They are just
Don't
bad.
they play the Giants at home on Thanksgiving
Tommy
Day?
DeVito, baby.
They'll win that game.
Well,
The Giants are awful.
yeah, but so are the Cowboys.
Yeah, but they're not that bad.
All
They're
right.
not that bad.
So the Cowboys playing tonight against the Texans in Jerry's World. The sun will not be an issue. It kicks off at 7:15. Texans are
Thankfully.
7.5-point favorites tonight on the road against the Cowboys, which equates to basically Vegas telling us the Texans are 10.5 points better.
Second
Cowboys
biggest
are right now.
line of the week.
Yeah, the other one was the Lions, and they
Yeah.
ended up winning their game 52-6.
Yeah.
So hopefully that doesn't happen tonight. But the way that the Cowboys play at home, it might. They have been horrible at home ever since they lost to the Packers last year in the playoffs. At this point, they sit with a 1% chance, a less than 1% chance to win the division, to make the playoffs, to win the Super Bowl, any of those things that you want to say. It's a non-zero chance, but it's pretty close to zero. They have a 3-6 record. At this point, I don't even know, what do we want to see from the Cowboys tonight? Do you want to see young guys contribute, Chuck? What are you hoping to see in a lost season?
I want to see a lot of things different than what I've seen over the last month, right? It's one thing to be losing games, but to not be competitive on the scoreboard, not a fun way to spend your time in front of the television. That's for sure. I don't care if you're a Cowboy fan or not. If you're just a casual football fan, you want to see somebody not play well for a half or be competitive for a half. So where are they going to get that from? I don't know, because as we've discussed here before, where is the hope? You've got a great kicker, and then even though you've got good players, almost all of them are hurt or not playing.
You get the great red-haired hope, Cooper Rush.
And I like Cooper Rush as a backup too, but he's obviously proven that he can win ball games, right? He was 5-1 up until last week. Both of those losses now against the Eagles, so maybe he'll have better hope starting a ball game that's not against.
And they competed
from Philadelphia.
They competed for a half.
Yeah.
And if they win tonight, they're 4-6. Outside chance to go on a run. I don't think anybody at this point thinks that that's actually feasible, though.
Well, I think the most encouraging thing you can do as a Cowboy fan is call up the NFL standings and look at all the mediocrity of 5-5 everywhere. Everywhere. They're 6-4, 4-6, 5-5. Everywhere.
6-5.
And or whatever it is. But it's you can get there. If you put together a 3-game winning streak, you're right there. But the problem is they can't do that because they don't have the team, they don't have the players. They were bad enough with Dak.
Well, the problem is that right now the Cowboys are 4 games out of a wild card spot.
Yeah.
Washington is the 7 seed right now. They're 7-4. The Cowboys, if they win tonight, will be 4-6. So they'll be 3 games out of a wild card spot, and with 7 to play.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. So at this point, I think you're just hoping for performances from your young guys. Who is going to be able to contribute on this team long term? The Mozzies, the DeMarvions, the Tolberts of the world, the Coopers of the world.
Let me ask you this: do they know? Because we keep saying play Trey Lance. Let's see what you have. Do they know what they have in Trey Lance, and he's just not a good player?
I think that we'll see him starting it. I think we'll see him starting in a couple of weeks. Once they're hopelessly out of it, I think it'll be the Trey Lance show. What do you think, Chug?
Yeah, that's my thought, right? If Trey Lance, they see something or he's managing whatever it is in practice that they're comfortable with, I think they would throw him to the Wolves. But they're not going to put him in unless they trust him to some degree. And what you guys have already aptly pointed out, right? There's still a sliver of hope.
Like that much.
Yeah, a modicum of hope.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah,
that was the
okay.
word I was going to throw out there.
Saying there's a chance.
I don't understand why, why do you even all you're doing is hurting your draft choices, right? I mean, why try to win a game at this point?
Well,
why not put in test all the unproven players you have, give them some time, protect your veterans, just start thinking about next year, and
because no matter what, football players are still battling for their paycheck. Like, the players are never going to be told go lose this game and actually go lose it. You're going to have to tank from the top down, and that's. I mean, you could argue they've been doing that all year. But
we're all in. We're all in. All in.
Like when you saw with the Texans a couple of years ago with Lovie Smith, if they lost that game, they would have had the number 1 pick, and instead they went out, they fought for Lovie Smith, they won the game, and they got the number 2 pick. Ended up being the best thing that could have happened.
Guys are playing for jobs next year, whether it's on the Cowboys roster or if those players end up going somewhere else. I mean, the tape is the tape, and these guys keep stats on every snap that's taken during practice. They measure what a guy's ability is, obviously every play, but also a guy's effort with these GPS tracking systems.
Yeah.
I mean, now coaches can manipulate obviously who's going to be in there, which could affect the outcome of a game, obviously based on, level of talent or ability, whatever the case may be. So
I don't think you can start openly tanking this with 8 games.
I'm with you. And I mean, again, I would never advocate for that. I mean, clearly the Texans didn't do that when they won that ball game and messed up, quote unquote, the number 1 pick. And look what ended up happening. They ended up getting CJ Stroud because of it.
Karma.
So, he hasn't looked that great this year anyway, but
he's still pretty damn good.
He's still pretty good.
I'd like to be Mike McCarthy at the Jake Paul Tyson fight the other night, watching the big screen with 75,000 other people, where Michael Irvin is joking with Jerry Jones about hiring Deion Sanders to be the head coach.
Yeah.
And people are cheering, and McCarthy's there watching it with everybody else. That's just got to be humiliating.
Dude, he shouldn't want to be the head coach of the Cowboys anymore. Like, get me the hell out of here if I'm Mike McCarthy. Can you guys imagine think of a more disastrous season though? Like, just from the beginning, like in training camp, you could just tell that the season's just kind of
Can I imagine it?
Yeah,
Can you
living it? Yeah,
I'm living it.
Yeah.
Well, you're a Browns fan. You can imagine a lot worse.
Yeah.
But just look at the things that have happened to the Cowboys that are just so weird and making this season seem like a movie instead of some normal football season. Like, there was a fire at a preseason hotel or out in
false alarm.
Yeah, false alarm. But it was a fire that destroyed a lot of possessions for this one player.
What?
A player had jury duty.
Remind me of the fire. I'm lost.
There was a fire at the team hotel.
Okay.
There was a player who had jury duty. That never happens. Brandon Aubrey goes to jury duty, and that never happens to players, especially in season.
Didn't affect anything.
Brandon Cooks has been out since late December because of a knee injection that ended up getting an infection, and he's barely coming back to practice. Jerry Jones is threatening radio hosts. Trayvon Diggs is yelling at reporters about a tweet that they had right after the game happens. Zeke was ruled a healthy scratch because of tardiness and as a punishment for a game. Dak Prescott is now out for the season just 2 months after he became the highest paid player in NFL history. And the week he got hurt, the week when all the media was asking him, why don't you run as much? And then he goes out and gets his hamstring hurt. And then CD is now complaining again about curtains at Jerry World. And Jerry is getting all fired up saying, well, why don't we just build a new stadium? Let's just tear a stadium down. Like, all of those things wrapped into one. We're only 9 games into the season. Like, can you think of a weirder season?
Matt wasn't born, in the early 90s when this was every season and they still won Super Bowls. Emmett was falling off of tractors and
getting run over by golf carts.
And Michael Irvin was in hotels with hookers with cocaine, and they had the big house, and there were private investigations with secret cameras, and
there was North Dallas before that.
Yeah,
right?
but Twitter wasn't around then.
True.
So
yeah, but there were books written about the early escapades of the 70s Cowboys, and so
North Dallas 40.
It has been. It does seem like a series of unfortunate events.
In recent memory, though, this is by far the strangest season that I've seen.
Well, everything has been lined up against them, right? I mean, you have a team that won 13 ball games last year. It looked like they were set up pretty well last year, then had the debacle in the playoffs. But you're thinking, okay, that's a one-off. You know, they can get back to where they are, be halfway decent, and make another run at this thing. And it's been quite the contrary since opening day.
On the other side, you have the Texans. The Texans started out 4-1. Nico Collins got hurt. They go 2-3 without Nico Collins. The first one was against the Patriots. I barely count that as a win, but still a win. A win is a win. On that side, how much does Nico Collins help this team, Chuck, with them kind of middling? I don't want to say that they're not good, because the Texans are a very good team, but they have not been what we thought they would be in the last few weeks.
Well, if you took CeeDee Lamb off the Cowboys, how bad of a disaster would this be, right? I mean, so you're taking arguably their most explosive weapon outside, taking him off the field. By the way, he gets hurt catching a touchdown pass where he was 10 yards past the defender.
Also doesn't help they lost Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
Correct. No question about that. I mean, you're right. We haven't even
Anderson
thought about
Jr.'s
that.
out. Their best
So,
defensive player.
They've had some injuries, but in their games, they've been close, right? They've been field goal games that they've lost. They've been right there. I certainly wouldn't be hitting the panic button if I'm in Houston. And the mettle of this team, I think you can trace back to last year when they were able to cobble together wins and be really competitive, even when a lot of guys were banged up. And they went through the whole year like that. So the fact that they're getting somebody back like Nico tonight, not to mention Mario Edwards, we're going to see on the field tonight on the defensive line. I mean, they're getting healthier. I would imagine this is going to be quite the mismatch tonight in Arlington.
I was just getting ready to say, I think this is a game where they come out and smack the Cowboys. The Cowboys are a team that's reeling. The Texans are a team that's lost, 3 out of 4, but are having those players only meetings, and they think they can be a lot better. They can be a lot better, and they run the football. Joe Mixon is going to have a field day tonight. If he's on your fantasy teams, I'd love to know.
You want him on your fantasy team.
I would love to know.
Did Don Harris just bring up
I would
fantasy
love
football?
to know his stats at the end of the night.
Don hates fantasy
whether or
football.
not he helps you.
Facetious. It's between facetious and fecal.
I don't have him on any of my 7 fantasy football teams. I do not.
Sounds like
last year, though, to your point, Chuck, they were hit by injury a lot. And it was especially on the offensive line. But CJ Stroud played so well that he kind of he overcame a lot of those. He was able to kind of overshadow some of those injuries and make up for them. This year, he hasn't been that player. He's 22nd in the league in QBR. He's already has more interceptions and turnovers this year than he did last year, and we're only 10 games into it. So when you have a quarterback who is taking a step back in his progression, you need everyone else to make up for it. And right now, I would argue that the Texans as a team are not playing as well as they did last year to make up for what CJ is doing this year.
Yeah, that might be fair. But, I've heard some people pontificate that they run a version of the West Coast offense that they've kind of, narrowed down in its scope. But maybe they've had to do that because they've got a lot of young players and they've got a lot of injuries too. So it's not just on the quarterback, that these things are not working out in their favor, perhaps, on offense, quite the way they were last year. But, again, people are going to game plan for CJ Stroud a little differently than they did last year when they had no tape on the guy. So defenses are going to start to learn to catch up, and he's going to, I'm sure he'll adapt just fine. But again, I know they've lost 3 of 4, but they've been right there in all 3 of those games that they've lost.
Last year, he was real protective of the football. And that was the thing, is like he doesn't make it mistakes. He doesn't turn over. I think he's gained some confidence. It's given him the ability, I guess you want to say, to take more chances. And that has hurt him a little bit this year. And he's been playing without Diggs and without Collins.
He was out without Mixon there for a little while too, and Damian Pierce. He's been missing a lot of weapons.
Probably thinks now. Last week he had a throw that he underthrew in the end zone that was picked off. That was just like really uncharacteristic.
Yeah,
and I think he was just trying to be so careful with the football. But yeah, he's been careless. I think that changes tonight. I think they come out and beat the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean
38-10.
Well,
Jordan Lewis isn't playing. I mean, this is a recipe for disaster for the Cowboys.
That was my next question: score and who wins? 38-10 is Don's.
Yeah,
Chuck.
38-10. I'll go with that.
That's. I would say Did the Cowboys get 10 points?
Yeah.
Are they able to get 10? Did they score a touchdown tonight?
Well, obviously, if they got 10 points,
I mean,
Maybe a defensive
5
touchdown.
safety.
defensive touchdown. There you go.
Special
There you
teams. 9 takes
I
one
was
to
gonna
the house.
I was gonna say something like
Yep.
28-12 because I feel like 4 Brandon Aubrey field goals is really just the way that this is gonna go. All right, let's get to the Spurs stuff. So 2 things I want to talk about with the Spurs. 1 is Stephon Castle, and 2 is Project Marvel. Let's start with Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle is arguably the best rookie in this year's class so far.
Here,
He's
let me
playing
move
the
up
best.
so y'all can pat me on the back for my prediction on
I'd say we go get some ice bags so you could,
Pat yourself on the back.
you could put ice on your elbow from patting yourself on the back too much. But we're in this nice chilly room here that you don't need any ice. That's for sure.
Yeah, Stephon Castle's been playing exceptionally well. Ever since he got inserted into the starting lineup, he's been playing even better. And it raises the question now, does Devin Vassell actually even get back into the starting lineup? Don
or Chris Paul.
I
think the future is Castle at the 1 and Devin
at the 2.
the 2. Yeah.
So, Don, you were the one that said Stephon Castle is going to be really good. We've seen him as an offensive playmaker, I think better than we all anticipated him being coming into this year, a better shooter than he showed that he was in college, the same defensive presence that he's been holding a lot of other players to well below their season averages in terms of his defensive efficiency. So what is it that is making Stephon Castle the player that you thought he would be coming into
his
the season?
Strength and his pace. And that's always been evident going back to when he was McDonald's All-American. He plays differently. He plays at a slower speed. You can't speed him up. He can get wherever he wants to get because of his strength. He doesn't always finish, and he's made some mistakes, and he turns the ball over some. But that's going to come with more experience. And I think Chris Paul's helped him a lot already. He's got that hesitation, slow step where guys can get up in the air and he draws contact. He loves to go to the free throw line, way wiser than his years in that regard. And he's a better shooter than I thought he would be. I knew he would be in time. That's a skill that you can teach. We saw that with Kawhi and with Tony Parker. But he's a naturally a better shooter, which he told everybody. He told us pre-draft camp, man, just because I didn't shoot it well at UConn doesn't mean I'm a good shooter. They didn't have me shoot the ball at UConn. That wasn't my role.
Right.
And, so I'm not surprised. I'm a little surprised at his numbers. I didn't know they would be that elevated this rookie year. I didn't think his minutes would be as elevated. But he's on pace. You saw LeBron pull him to the side after that Lakers game the other night. LeBron pulled him to the side and was just like, boy, you're going to be special. You do something. You keep doing what you're doing. You're going to be special. LeBron sees it. I think everybody sees it.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing exceptionally well. I wonder when this team is full, how the lineups are going to shape out and what he's going to be asked to do. Because when Wemby plays, when Jeremy comes back, when Devin is fully healthy and playing, and they're giving him a full workload, I just wonder how that rotation is going to shape up. Because Pop said it best when before the season, on media day, their job is to make me play you. And I think at this point, Stephon has done that the best of anybody on the team.
Yeah, I agree.
And he's closer in age to Wemby. And so, yeah, he's going to be here with Wemby.
Yeah.
So
when I see him play, I think
that.
a lot of young Kawhi. Like, I really do think, like, because his defensive presence is deafening. It's very, very Kawhi-esque.
His defense is, I see,
not his offense, but his defensive capability.
I see him more as a hybrid between Drew Holiday and SGA. To me, as a playmaker, point guard, Kawhi never had that in his game, still doesn't. Kawhi's a natural 3, very strong. But from a defensive perspective, he gets up into you like Kawhi does.
Yeah, that's where I see Kawhi. It's just that defensive presence. Drew Holiday's a really good comp, a young Drew Holiday who could be that kind of playmaker. Now he's more of a 3-and-D kind of guy. But
he's got SGA written all over him if he just continues to develop. He's going to be he could be a 30-point per game guy.
I want to talk about Project Marvel as well. So Project Marvel is what is being dubbed. It has been dubbed Project Marvel, which is what the downtown entertainment district is being called for San Antonio, and bringing a new Spurs stadium along with everything else that goes down in the hemisphere. So we're finally breaking the silence on that this week. Thursday, City Council is going to get a briefing when it comes to a feasibility study, when it comes to potential funding sources, a kind of a conceptual plan for what this may look like. My question is it's a $3 to $4 billion enterprise. How much of it is going to be from the Spurs? How much of it is going to be from the city? And how much is the taxpayer going to have to fund? And do you guys think that they will want to fund that? Chuck?
That's a good question. I don't know, to answer your question, if people want to fund it or not. I know when we were going through the Frostbank Center, when they were building that, that was a huge component, right? If you don't get the taxpayer dollar entity on the ballot for people to vote yay or nay for, then the Spurs were going to move. And so I think that was pretty abundant that was going to happen at the time. It passed overwhelmingly. Of course, it helps when you go win a championship, leading up to the vote. So, will people want to vote for something like that, to have another arena down there? I have no idea. I do know this based on how Bear County has voted the last several cycles. Anything that includes more taxes or more governmental control passes with flying colors. So I would imagine that if this gets on a ballot based on people's ability to vote in mass in Bear County, that this would probably pass as well.
Yes, I agree 100%. I also think there is a possibility that you can use taxpayer money without putting it to a vote of the masses. And that is what they did with the Mission's new stadium, with the TERS tax. And we're finding this out. This is really complicated. I've been in the weeds with Ron Nierenberg over the last year and a half with this many times. And he was trying to explain to me that the model that was used for 99 Spurs new arena and was used with so many communities where taxpayers foot the bill and a vote and all that is not necessarily the model anymore. Hence the Spurs recruiting Michael Dell, Joe Gebbia, Kristen Lewis, and the guy from Atlanta, Paul, whatever his last name is, I forget, that have the capital to put the money up front, okay, to build most of it and get their return with the development that comes along with it. We're seeing this with Western Urban and the Mission Stadium. The Mission Stadium is going to be funded by the tax revenues of the retail, the apartments, the restaurants, all that, which will go back to Western Urban, which will pay them off for their initial investment. And then for 20, 30, 40 years, it's just money rolling in. And so there will probably be a element of a tax. We'll find out more on Thursday.
We'll find out more on Thursday for sure.
But the bottom line is the train always goes forward. There's always the naysayers. Whenever this comes up, there's always the letters to the editor of the newspaper. I don't want to pay no taxes for these $1 million owners and all that. But for a city to move forward, like Austin's been kicking our you-know-what for the last 15 years, for a city to move forward, you have to have progress. You have to have new development. You have to have infrastructure and new arenas and things like this. There's not going to be the leverage anymore of moving because Seattle's going to get a team and Vegas is going to get a team from expansion. And so this is something San Antonians, I would think, would want to do. And by the way, it's been moved up 5 years because they got Wemby. The Spurs weren't planning on this before last year's lottery.
That was going to be another question: is what is the Wemby effect when it comes to something like this? Because you guys mentioned it was the championship in '99 helped spur, pun intended, the new arena that they have right now, the AT&T Center, formerly AT&T Center, Frostbank Center, helped get that development off the ground. And now you have a young, probably going to be the best player in the NBA at a certain time in his career, hopefully, in San Antonio, and you want, one, to keep him here, but two, to use him as the leverage to continue your progression as a franchise.
That's why this is on the agenda for this Thursday instead of a Thursday 5 years from now.
I would also think that as far as the city goes, this is 6 months until Ron Nierenberg can't be the mayor anymore. I would think that he wants this as part of his legacy as well. Big time. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that they're pushing to try and get this done sooner rather than later. They've
been working on it for a while.
2032 is when the lease is up at the Frostbank Center. So they don't really have, it's not like they have a deadline to get this done Thursday, but because of all of those elements, they've moved all of that up, is what it feels like.
The Missions is a short-term project that's going to be done quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The Spurs new arena and tearing down the
Institute of Texan Cultures.
That's a long-term. But they're getting the ball rolling now.
It's also not just an arena. It's like an entire entertainment district. Like it's going to be restaurants. It's like Arlington. Exactly. Yeah. It's going to be like Texas Live or whatever they have out there. Mm-hmm. It's going to be something similar to that. Restaurants and bars and retail and all of those things.
There's a big Alamo Dome component to this too, of renovation to the Alamo Dome.
Elaborate on that.
Huge, $200 million worth of, or at least, of renovation to the Alamo Dome, expanding, updating.
That's all stuff they have to get done for the Final Fours and stuff like that, right?
Well, we're not going to get another Final Four after this one, unless they do something like that, which is what they want.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how Thursday goes down. We'll talk about it more on Thursday, obviously, but I thought we've been talking so much about the Spurs and how their franchise and the arrow on this franchise is going straight up, especially with Victor and with Stephon and with Devin and with all these players that they're getting. It's time to start investing in that, and now you're seeing that kind of come from the city.
I'm all for moving the needle forward, right? For growth, for better ability to get around downtown, to have more things to do down there, to have better places to eat, all of that stuff. And if this is the vehicle that you have to have in order to make that stuff happen, so be it. Because to this point, nothing else has moved the needle. Or I shouldn't say nothing else, but there's been very little in the way of huge leaps of progress to making downtown more vital and viable.
Yeah, and ever since COVID happened, downtown has kind of, I don't want to say died, but it's definitely been less of a place to go. The business down there has been weaning ever since.
The Pearl has been a godsend.
Yeah, and Southtown, they've done really nice things around there. It's just, how do you bring it up another notch? Right. For me, we're talking about adding a minor league baseball stadium down there. Wouldn't be, for me, the ideal thing. I would rather go chase a major league team to bring down there. But if this is the vehicle that spawns other things, then
more power.
Who am I to say not do it?
The home of the Durham Bulls. When I was there this weekend.
Nice.
They've got a nice little stadium in Durham, North Carolina.
Bob, anything before we get out of here?
Just Herman was agreeing. He said, let me pull that up right here. Not happening. If they try to float taxpayer funding for a smaller stadium with parking downtown, not going to happen.
Yeah, it is. And let me tell you,
his name is Herman Munster.
Herman.
It is. It's going to happen. It's always going to happen. And you got to quit thinking about things like parking. Parking is going to be a thing of the past. Do they think about parking in Madison Square Garden in New York City? Do they think about parking in Chicago or Philadelphia?
Yeah, but those have subways and trains around
right,
there
and
too.
that's where we're going to have to start thinking differently with mass transit. We're going to have to start thinking, isn't Elon digging a tunnel from the airport in San Antonio to downtown?
I keep trying to look up if there's been any update on that.
You're not catching me on a Via bus.
No,
we're gonna have driverless cars. Your car will just drop you off and then go and park somewhere.
Not trying to say anything bad about
some of the early sketches seriously have grass and land and businesses on top of what we know is 281 now, between the Alamo Dome and Institute of Texan Cultures, with 281 running underneath it, and all of that being open.
Can we just finish the flyovers first? Like, do we really
the
need more?
Bullet train going from downtown to the north
It
side.
already takes me
I'm
25
okay with the
minutes.
flyovers. It's the stuff next to the flyovers. Why are we messing with that?
All right,
too?
we've really devolved
Yes,
into chaos now. Hey, Bob, anything else?
That's it.
All right. That's all we got for today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Remember, download, rate, review, subscribe, use a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Watch the Cowboys and
I'm
Texans
taking my
tonight.
hoverboard to the game.
Your hoverboard. Okay.
Yeah.
And chaos.
In the future.
Chaos. We'll see you guys on Thursday.